Climbing has always been an easily accessible activity because it's a sport that can be done at any level. You can climb trees in a nearby park freehand, or you can hook yourself up to some ropes and scale sheer cliffs with all the equipment you need for the journey. Or, as we found out from those brave enough to attempt it, you can climb free solo. Those experienced enough can make those journeys up tall cliffs and other walls without any equipment. You can even use equipment in an indoors facility if you'd rather not face the uncertainty and relentless of natural environments. However you may choose to do it, there's a space in it for people of all ability and experience. Climbing, or hiking up a mountain, is always difficult, no matter how easy the mountain is considered by others, and no matter how many have scaled before. The difficulty is all psychological. Although most people are perfectly capable of such a feat, most would rather not venture out of their comfort zone to even try hiking, which is fair enough. But for those who choose to make the journey up, it's a journey that requires a large amount of willpower and determination. As someone who's both competed in local climbing tournaments in my younger years, and has scaled a few of Scotland's array of Munros and Corbettes, I can tell you, it's never been easy. Countless times during hiking trips, I've said to myself, I would rather give up now than see this through. Nevertheless, I saw the journey through. Celeste is about that journey. Celeste is an indie platformer released in 2018, made by a small group of people at RickFernello. It gained a lot of traction and even won a Game Award for Impact, and rightly so. Many people note Celeste as a pinnacle of indie games because of its perfect difficulty and sleek controls. The base for the gameplay and subsequently the game's success is the air-type movement Celeste utilises. While the run, jump and wall jump are all staples of modern platformers, it's one ability that opens the door to thousands of variations for platforming. That simple little dash is what turns Celeste from a good platformer to an amazing example of thoughtful gameplay loops involving movement. It's one thing to make a double jump, but to turn that double jump into a directional dash to push you that bit forward, or to thread yourself through that tiny gap, it's purely genius. Celeste is constantly showing you new ideas and mechanics, and then innovating upon those same ideas in a way only a game developer could, in a way that the player can never see coming. Celeste is known as a difficult platformer, a genre often defined by titles like Super Meat Boy. The logical conclusion of the timeline of platform releases is eventually you end up with players wanting to hone their skills in and sink time into brutal, tightly knit levels and challenges. And as a platformer, Celeste delivers in this regard. However, not only does it deliver, it also continues to exceed past its predecessors and peers into a more nuanced and fleshed out gem. It does this through many aspects, one of those being its focus on story. What may come as a surprise when you see the gameplay of Celeste without any prior knowledge of the game is how marvellously woven the gameplay is into a coherent and compelling story. You play as Madeline, or a self-insert name if you'd prefer. You've decided to attempt to reach the summit of Celeste Mountain. It's this journey of progression that connects the gameplay to the story. Every room you clear, every challenge you overcome, that's both your own achievement and its representative achievement in the game. Celeste makes sure to let you know that you're doing well every chance it can, whether that's in postcards at the beginning of the levels letting you know that it's always okay to take a break, or the constant checkpoints of completing each room. Celeste makes it clear that no matter how difficult you may find it, you're going to be congratulated no matter how much you put in. Although Madeline displays a large amount of individuality and is a transcendent breath of fresh air for video game protagonists, she also works just as well as a stand-in for the player. She's smart, extremely deep, and in her head about a lot of things, thoughtful about her own decisions and choices. At the beginning of your journey, you meet an old woman at the base of the mountain. The old woman seems to discourage you from your climb, claiming that many have come to try and many have failed. Whether Madeline is just stubborn or genuinely determined, she overcomes the mountain's first challenge and decides to attempt the summit. The more you're able to comfortably control, the more freeing that gameplay becomes. When I replayed this game for footage, it was a far more tranquil and smooth sailing experience than my first playthrough 4 years ago. It's that freeness of motion the more you play that's intrinsic to the story. What starts off as uncomfortable new beginnings, constantly running out of stamina, and every jump feeling like life or death, soon becomes more free once you begin to pick up on the game's controls and physics. It's this improvement that allows you to complete much harder challenges at the same difficulty as those first few rooms of the game. This is all down to the fact that the controls are so faithful to you. It's all about honing your skills and mastering your technique, rather than wrangling your controller and getting used to the movement. It may sound obvious, but it's ecstatically satisfying that the better you get, the more fun it becomes. And then being able to learn new skills, like the wave dash implemented in Chapter 9. When I first got to the tutorial of that ability, and I realized I was able to do that the whole time, I wanted to replay the whole game to try and make shortcuts and pull off other cool tricks with it. For the game to still be innovating off those movement mechanics in free DLC years after launch is such a success story in indie development. Those new mechanics integrated into the level design that I spoke about earlier. Each new introduction of different mechanics, fleshed up within each chapter, is a new challenge to overcome on the overall journey of the game. While it's not a conscious challenge, the cycle of learning is intrinsic to Celeste's core values and lessons. There's bubbles that go bloop, bubbles that go bloop, blocks that send you flying, blocks that you send flying, blocks that you can go through, blocks that'll go through you if you make them angry, clouds you can boost off, keys that unlock locked sections, series of keys that move a locked block, drum that'll kill you if you retrace your steps, and a feather you can use to soar through the air. Never sticking to one idea for too long, Celeste is constantly introducing new features with soft tutorials, and then fleshing them out in ways that warrant full games made out of them, only to intertwine them with a new mechanic. The gameplay is very hard, but quite calming in its routine in a way. It's more about the precision of movements rather than just moving and praying that it'll work out. That's why it's notable that the game occasionally places you under stress due to the circumstances around you in the story, in order to pull you out of it and help you find your flow state. One of those times that really sticks out to me is your first encounter with what the game refers to as part of you, more commonly known online as Badalin. This part of you manifests herself on Celeste Mountain, appearing as an alternate version of the player character. Celeste Mountain brings out the worst in every person who attempts to reach the summit, and Badalin is exactly that. She's your insecurities. She's the chains holding you down from moving on with your life onto new, better things. She's a manifestation of Madeline's anxiety and depression, fronting to doubt her and discourage her from continuing her journey. You first encounter her in Chapter 2, the old site, where she bursts out of a mirror and flips the level on its head. After some platforming sequences, you catch up to her, eventually initiating a chase sequence, where clones of the player follow your movement. It's an incredibly stressful section, as you can never stay in one spot too long as the clones will catch up to you, causing a respawn. You also have to worry about your movements when you're required to backtrack to get to other sections, as there's often collisions with your clones when following the path you took. It's anxiety-inducing, and noticeably panicky, which is exactly what this character is a manifestation of. By putting more restrictions on movement and flow, Celeste is able to throw you into the deep end of your emotions and show you what it's truly like to struggle, to teach you how to focus and pull yourself out of it. In fact, every character of Celeste is representative of a different kind of issues seen in many of the target audience of the game. For a game with very few characters, each one is a significant part of the personality of the game. The old woman you first meet at the base of the mountain ends up being a strong guiding voice for your journey, constantly pushing you to prove her wrong. Theo, a fellow climber you meet on the mountain, is your support and guidance in facing your fears and anxiety. And finally, Mr. Oshiro, the owner of Celeste's hotel, Celestial Resort, who's overbearing, weird, and downright unnerving in his desperation sometimes. But he's oddly human in every regard, clearly swallowed in himself and unable to let go in fear of losing everything. No character is perfect, and all are relatable in different ways. The old woman is a representation of doubt, of stubbornness, and of a harsh but truthful voice attempting to guide, but often ultimately diminishing. Theo could be a representation of that person who helps you through those hard times, although he is not perfect. He could be a representation of freedom, of running away, abandoning responsibility. Mr. Oshiro is a representation of the inability to let go, grief, denial, or anything you particularly see in him. The general take from all the characters in the game is take what you want. Just as the mountain brings out the worst parts of every person who scales it, you'll only see in these characters what resonates within you the most. Celeste is ultimately a personal game, and it's perceived differently by every individual. That's why you have to hand it to the Celeste team working on the game, for expertly crafting these archetypes to be relatable, but not humiliatingly relatable, just enough to see yourself in them, without feeling the shame of those issues that should be more normalized. After your journey comes close to ending in Chapter 6, when you fall from the base of the summit all the way back down, you once again clash with that part of you. After an emotional climax, you reconcile and find a way to work it out, this time together and not separated. It was silly to think that you could simply let go of all those bad things manifesting inside of you, because nobody's capable of that. Everyone faces issues, and it's learning to accept those that will help you push forward, rather than deny them and seek to destroy them. After you sort things out, you learn to work together, and with that, you level up, finally getting that long-awaited double dash. This is possibly the most freeing moment in the game. Those first few rooms with the double dash, with the realization setting in that, once again, the game has opened a new door of movement and gameplay to enjoy. It's truly a moment to bask in. Even before overcoming the mountain itself and reaching the summit, you've overcome possibly the largest challenge you've faced. Yourself. Celeste is about Madeline's journey through her anxiety and her negative mindset and outlook on life, but it is never a tragedy. You never succumb to those moments of collapse and self-doubt. Instead, you collect yourself and remember to breathe and work it through. And you make progress, not only through the game, but your own journey in mindfulness and well-being. It's a realistic but positive and uplifting portrayal of these issues many people face. The brilliance of its portrayal is that it can be enjoyed by anybody. While it closely resembles the struggles of those with anxiety disorders, it is never honed into just one issue at a time. Instead, it remains broad in order to relate to a wider audience, because everyone struggles with or has struggled with these issues at least one point in their life. It shows courage in overcoming this, and learning to accept and deal with those thoughts of doubt. It shows that having people around you who not only care, but can also be able to show comfort to you by being humane enough to emphasize and relate to your problems is the healthiest way of living. It shows you that it's okay to struggle, but it's never okay to not be able to do anything about it. And Celeste is a success. Many people also left the game with the same positive outlook as I did. It's marvelous how a game about climbing up a mountain was able to affect so many people so deeply, and it's why I, like many others, hold this game so close to my own heart. It's a triumph for a modern generation of gamers who can relate to the struggles of the game. Almost 40% of people who have played Celeste reached the top of Celeste Mountain and completed the main story. For a game classified as a difficult platformer, that's a comparably high completion percentage for a game of its category. The reason Celeste has such a high completion rate compared to similar games is because Celeste does not want you to know that you're struggling. The way the gameplay is spliced up in room-based challenges is designed in the main story as a way to constantly feed progression to the player, so you're never stuck in one place for too long. Because of that stream of progression and improvement, you never have enough time to let that difficulty sink in. On top of that, you respawn so quickly that your only setback is having to go back however far you made it through the level. After a death, it only takes roughly 2 seconds before you're able to play again. If you compare that to the extended death animations of games like Mario or Sonic, it's a sliver of time between the animations and you controlling again. If you mash through this animation, you can even make that time a bit quicker. Due to that near instant loop of gameplay, it's not often that you really get a moment to stop and think that you might end up getting beaten by a challenge. It just makes you want to get up and try it again. Although Celeste wants you to know you're facing a challenge, it never wants you to think that that challenge might overcome you. The difficulty curve is also steady enough to allow you to be constantly improving at a rate so that you're never out of control. Following the main story, the post-game content unfolds into far more difficult levels, those being B-sides and C-sides, as well as Chapter 9 that came out in free DLC. The B-sides are a welcome progression of that challenging platforming in a far more difficult but rewarding way, and the C-sides are that, but times 10. Although presented as completely optional, after feeling the satisfaction of completing the main content, it's hard to stay away from those more challenging levels as you can become addicted to overcoming the struggle. It's a game I always love to see other people experiencing in any form. When I see people struggling through it, I think, How wonderful that you're able to go through that struggle, that you're able to understand the struggle and overcome it, whether that's getting through it or abandoning it for your own sake. Celeste doesn't want you to complete it, not necessarily. It wants you to make it as far as you want to. If you didn't make it past the first level, that's okay, because at least you tried. At least you were willing enough to pick up the game and make an attempt. That was your journey, and with time, you'll only be able to do more. While Celeste has plenty of extra content once the main A-sides have been completed, you're made well aware of what it is. Extra content. Complete the first 7 chapters and you'll see credits roll and unlock the final screen. It's only then that next content will unlock. You don't have to force yourself to get through these extra levels just for the sake of a completion percentage or a few more achievements. It's your choice to continue or not. You create your own game and ending. You decide whether or not you're ready to go through those extra challenges. And if you are, well, that too is your journey. And that's brilliant, that you can just have your own experience and make your own time out of it. It's why when I see creators doing crazy things like beating every single bit of the game without dying, or when I see modders put in extra hard challenges for those brave enough to try, it makes me so happy, because I want people to break their own barriers or what they thought was possible for themselves to accomplish. And Celeste is a triumphant space for just doing that. Celeste is all about progression. Celeste is not only a mountain, but that mountain is a completion bar. Each room you beat, each chapter you clear, each death, each strawberry, each B-side, each and every little moment when you beat something, that's that completion bar exceeding 100% in your journey just that little bit more. Celeste wants you to find something that challenges you, and to keep at it until you've mastered it. Go outside, touch grass, climb a mountain. You might like it more than you think. This is Bloby's 12th favourite game of all time. If you didn't know, on the first Saturday of every month this year, I've set myself a goal of posting a video essay about one of my favourite games of all time. If you're interested in seeing more of these videos, please subscribe to see more content like this on the channel.